Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But most people never get close. Not because they're lazy, not because they're broken, but because they're living a life that doesn't belong to them. A life designed by someone else's blueprint. A script handed down by parents, culture, school, religion. A life rooted in should instead of want, in obligation instead of truth. And the worst part? They call it normal. They call it success. They even celebrate it, not realizing they've buried their real self beneath layers of performance. You wake up, go to work, smile on cue, keep the peace, check the boxes. You hit the milestones, career, relationships, maybe even accolades. But none of it feels real. Deep down, something's off. You feel heavy for no reason, disconnected, like you're floating outside your own life, watching someone else live it. You've followed the path. You've done what was expected. So why does it feel hollow? You start asking the wrong question. Why am I lost? But Jung would say, you're not lost. You're just far from your own center. You're orbiting around identities that were assigned to you. And the longer you stay in orbit, the more you forget that you were meant to be the sun. If you're tired of living someone else's life, subscribe now. Because this isn't about motivation. It's about breaking a spell. The spell that says fitting in is more important than waking up. The spell that rewards compliance and punishes authenticity. We're not here to fix you. We're here to bring you back to yourself. This life that doesn't feel like yours, it was built from projections. Your father's expectations, your mother's wounds, society's definition of success. Teachers who saw you not as you are, but as a category. Friends who rewarded the version of you that was convenient. Social media that told you who to be and what to desire. And you adapted. You shaped yourself to survive. You became fluent in pretending. And over time, you started to mistake that survival mask for your real face. You edited your instincts, filtered your voice, and diluted your presence. You played the character so long, you forgot it was a role. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to face the world. But he also warned, the longer you wear the mask, the harder it is to take off. Eventually, you forget what your own soul sounds like. But here's the truth most people run from. No one is coming to unmask you. No one is going to hand you back your real life. You have to be the one to stop pretending. You have to be the one to turn around and walk back to your core. And that journey isn't glamorous. It's uncomfortable. It's raw. It's lonely. But it's the only way to reclaim what was always yours. This series is your mirror, not to show you who you've become, but to help you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. We begin now. At some point early in your life, you knew who you were. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough to feel a spark, a sense of clarity, a rhythm, a knowing that was entirely your own. You knew what you liked, you knew what you hated, you knew what felt right in your body. But slowly, almost invisibly, that voice was taught to shut up. You were told to be polite when you wanted to be direct, told to smile when you wanted to scream, told to sit still when your soul wanted to move. And every time you obeyed, your voice got quieter. Until one day, you couldn't hear it anymore. Carl Jung believed that the self, your true self, never disappears. It just retreats. It hides in the shadow, waiting for you to get tired of the noise, waiting for you to finally stop performing, waiting for you to remember. You've been conditioned to betray your own instincts in order to belong. And the lie you believed is that belonging requires you to be less of yourself, that your truth is too loud, Your emotions are too much. Your wants are inconvenient. So you adapted. You became digestible. And in doing so, you made yourself disappear. But here's the cost. You can only silence yourself for so long before the pain becomes unbearable. The anxiety, the numbness, the burnout, it's not random. It's your repressed self screaming through the cracks, not to punish you, but to wake you up. This isn't just a healing journey. It's a rebellion against everything that told you who you had to be. Your real voice is still there, buried, but alive. And if you're ready, it's time to dig it up. This is where we start. There's a price to living a life that isn't yours. At first, it's subtle, a little discomfort, a vague sense of unease. You get good at pushing it down. You call it stress, burnout, needing a vacation. But the longer you stay disconnected from your true self, the more that unease spreads. It seeps into everything. Your relationships, your work, your decisions. And eventually, it becomes numbness, the quiet surrender, the slow death of meaning. Carl Jung warned that repression always comes with a cost. When you suppress your real desires, silence your instincts, and live by someone else's values, you don't just lose passion, you lose direction. You wake up, go through the motions, but the spark is gone. You're efficient, but empty. Polished, but purposeless. You smile, but you feel like a ghost in your own skin. And the world won't stop you. In fact, it'll reward you for fitting in, for being easy, for not asking hard questions. That's the trap. Because the better you play the role, the harder it is to admit you're acting. And when you've built your entire life around that performance, pulling off the mask feels like destruction. But Jung saw the deeper danger. If you don't destroy the false self will destroy you. Maybe not all at once, but slowly, silently. You'll lose touch with what excites you, what scares you, what moves you. You'll become efficient at everything except being alive. That's not a life, it's maintenance. So ask yourself, what have you sacrificed just to stay comfortable? How much of your voice have you quieted just to be accepted? And is that acceptance even real, if it's based on a version of you that doesn't exist? That's the cost. And it's always higher than you think. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unremarkable on the surface, when something shifts. Maybe it's a conversation, a sudden stillness, a book, a sentence, a long look in the mirror. And for the first time, you feel it clearly. You've been living on autopilot. Something inside you stirs, and you realize the person you've been isn't the person you were meant to be. That flicker of discomfort, that's not weakness. That's your real self trying to make a sound. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious isn't just a dumping ground for repressed trauma. It's the birthplace of your individuality. And when something from that deep place finally rises to the surface, it feels like a crisis. You question your job, your relationships, your values. You feel lost. But it's not the disorientation of losing your way. It's the shock of realizing you were never on your own path to begin with. You start noticing the masks, the forced smiles, the conversations that drain you, the choices you've been calling your own that were actually made out of fear, duty, or guilt. And you feel this split, the part of you that wants to stay comfortable and the part of you that knows you've outgrown the life you're in. That split is the beginning of awakening. But Jung warned, awakening is painful. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't bring instant clarity. It brings questions, doubt, loneliness. And yet, it also brings something else. Potential. The chance to stop pretending. The chance to begin again. not with a new job or new relationship, but with a new foundation built on truth. That flicker, that discomfort, don't ignore it. That's the signal that the spell is breaking. And once it does, there's no going back, only forward, into yourself. There's a voice inside you. It's quiet. It doesn't shout over the noise. It doesn't beg for attention. But it never disappears. It's the voice that speaks when everything else goes still. The one that says, "This isn't it." The one that knows when you've betrayed yourself. The one you've trained yourself to ignore. Carl Jung believed that this inner voice, what he called the self, is not just your intuition. It's your core. It holds the blueprint of who you really are. But to access it, you have to get past all the noise you've mistaken for truth. The social conditioning, the pressure to perform, the fear of being misunderstood, the need to belong. Most people bury the voice so deep they forget it exists. They fill their lives with distractions, with endless goals, meaningless conversations, and constant noise. Not because they love any of it, but because it drowns out the truth. And the truth is simple. They're afraid. Afraid of what that voice might say if they really listened. Because that voice doesn't play by the rules. It doesn't care about your reputation. It doesn't care if people approve. It doesn't want you to be liked. It wants you to be whole. And to become whole, you might have to break things, leave things, disappoint people who only love the version of you that plays along. Jung warned that ignoring the self leads to one outcome, a life of quiet despair. You might succeed, you might look impressive, but deep down, you'll feel hollow. Because the one voice that mattered, the one that could have led you back to yourself, was silenced. But here's the thing. That voice isn't gone. It's waiting. Still, patient, ready to speak the moment you're ready to listen. The question is, are you? You don't wake up all at once. The shift starts quietly. You stop laughing at the same jokes. You look around at the life you built and realize it doesn't excite you. It just keeps you busy. You stop reaching for the things you used to chase, not because you've outgrown ambition, but because you finally see the lie underneath it. None of this was ever yours. Carl Jung called this the midlife crisis, but not in the shallow, cliché sense. He saw it as a psychic eruption, the moment the unconscious finally refuses to stay silent. When the soul revolts against the mask. When everything you've buried rises up and demands your attention. You think you're breaking down, but you're actually breaking open. You'll question your job, your relationships, your goals. You'll feel alone. You'll feel misunderstood. Because the world applauds the version of you it can predict. But the one who's waking up, that one's unpredictable. That one's dangerous. That one scares people. Don't expect applause. Don't expect clarity. Don't expect immediate peace. Awakening isn't euphoric. It's disorienting. It shakes your foundation, exposes your contradictions, and forces you to face how far you've drifted from your core. That pain you feel. It's not dysfunction. It's data. Proof that the spell is breaking. This is the moment where most people numb out. They go back to the comfort of autopilot. They convince themselves it's just a phase. But if you're willing to stay, willing to listen to the discomfort, you will uncover something deeper than success. You will uncover your truth. And that truth will never fit back into the life you've been living. At some point, everyone hears it. That quiet, uncomfortable whisper that says, "This isn't it." The moment usually comes when the noise fades, after the achievement, after the applause, after the distraction wears off. It's the voice of the real you, the one that never forgot who you were supposed to be. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious never stops speaking. It only gets quieter when we refuse to listen. But it doesn't disappear. It festers. It waits. And when you finally stop distracting yourself, when you turn down the volume of the world, it returns. Not as a suggestion, but as a demand. A demand to stop living by borrowed values. A demand to stop calling survival a life. This voice doesn't yell. It doesn't punish. It just makes you restless. It pulls your attention away from what no longer fits. And that's where the crisis begins. Because once you start hearing it, you can't unhear it. You can try to drown it out with busyness, with people, with plans. But it keeps finding cracks in your defenses. It asks harder questions. Why are you really doing this? Who are you trying to impress? What would you do if no one was watching? And maybe the hardest one of all, what part of you did you abandon to become who you are now? This is where people break or transform. Most run. They silence the voice, label it as irrational, call it a midlife crisis. But a few choose differently. They listen. They follow it. They let it lead them not forward, but inward. And that's where the real life begins, not the one you built for others, but the one that's been waiting for you to come home. Why do most people stay trapped in lives they don't want? Because the alternative, the truth, is terrifying. Being real isn't just about honesty. It's about risk. When you step into your truth, you lose the shield of your persona. You become visible. And with visibility comes judgment, rejection, misunderstanding. Carl Jung wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not because it's impossible, but because it's raw. It exposes what you've spent a lifetime hiding. Your anger, your desire, your creativity, your rebellion, your pain. To be real means you can no longer blame others for your choices. It means claiming your freedom and everything that comes with it. That's why most people never break out. Not because they don't want to, but because they can't bear the silence that comes with being misunderstood. They'd rather be accepted as a copy than rejected as their real self. And so they stay small, polished, tolerable. But here's the truth. You can't find peace in a lie. You can't feel alive if your life is a performance. At some point, the inner tension becomes too great. And if you don't consciously break the mask, life will break it for you through crisis, burnout, breakdown. Not to punish you, but to wake you up. If you feel that tension building, don't run. Don't numb it. Listen, that pressure isn't dysfunction. It's your real self trying to surface. And yes, it will cost you. But what you lose was never yours to keep. And what you gain is everything you were always meant to become. Carl Jung understood a truth that many never grasp. You don't owe anyone an explanation for becoming who you are. When you begin to reclaim your life, people will resist. Not because you've wronged them, but because your transformation threatens their illusion. You were predictable. You played your role. And now you're breaking the script. You'll hear it. You've changed. They'll say it like it's a bad thing, like growth is betrayal. But that's not your problem. That's projection. People want you to evolve, but only if it doesn't disrupt their comfort. They want you strong, but not too strong. Authentic, but only when it suits them. But here's the truth. You don't need their approval to outgrow the life they expected you to live. You don't need to defend your boundaries, justify your silence, or explain your clarity. The moment you start explaining your evolution to those committed to misunderstanding you, you give away your power. Jung would call this individuation's test, the point where you stop asking who will accept your truth and start asking what it costs you to keep hiding it. This is where most people fold. They go back to being likable, back to being safe. But if you've made it this far, you know the real cost isn't being disliked. It's disappearing from yourself. You don't need to be understood. You need to be whole. Stop explaining. Start becoming. If you've come this far, you already know the truth. You were never lost. You were just far from your center, buried under years of expectations, roles, projections, and fear. Jung didn't promise that finding yourself would be peaceful. He said it would be a process of unmaking, of shedding everything false, of dying to who you were told to be so you could rise as who you truly are. This isn't the kind of transformation people notice right away. You won't get applause for walking away from a life that made you numb. You won't be celebrated for choosing silence over performance. But something deeper starts to happen. Your energy shifts, your presence sharpens, and for the first time in a long time, you feel alive. Not because you're achieving, but because you're aligned. You'll lose things. People who only knew the mask might not recognize the real you. You'll be misunderstood, maybe even rejected. But what you gain is far more powerful. Your truth, your clarity, your self-respect. And once that clicks into place, you stop needing permission. You stop chasing validation. You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. This is what Jung meant by individuation. Not perfection, not endless self-improvement, but integration, wholeness, freedom. It's not something you arrive at. It's something you walk every day. A daily decision to be real instead of liked, to be rooted instead of reactive, to be free instead of familiar. The life you were living was never yours. But the one you're building now, every part of it is. And that's the life that can't be taken away. Because it's not built on approval. It's built on truth. You're not lost, you're back. And this time, you're not leaving.